basically it is a project that you would take on to further the education of your students, but it's a project that was separate from the core curriculum that you were teaching at the time. And so local history was always a little bit of an interest to me, and it became a much greater interest once I got involved in it. Went to Sparta Library, and they had photographs that just amazed me, because I'm not original with Sparta. I came here in '59 and or '58, and so the things that I'd been growing up with, all of a sudden I was seeing photos of things that were 70, 80, 100 years older than current day, and it was very interesting to me. It created in my mind a then and now thought process. And so as I pursued my master's, I also, my thesis had to do with taking local history and creating an interest in that in an attempt to further interest in state and regional and national and world history. I thought that would be a nice door to open with. If kids take pride in their hometown and the history of their hometown, it may go further. And so that's what I did. And so I went to the historical commission that was in existence at the time, and that was I think originated in 1991. Mary and Bob Hale, Leonard Ferrick, just a number of folks who were founders of this group, Vernon and Mary Cummings and others. And I said, can I borrow your photographs? And they said, sure, you can borrow our photographs. So I did, and got more and more interested in local history. I remember going back in there one time. This is when the office was at Ken DeYoung's home, his father's old law office across from the post office. And they said, oh, Larry, why don't you join us? Why don't you become a commissioner or at least a friend of what we got going here? And I was so full of self-importance. And I said, well, I'm really rather busy, and I really have a lot going. I'm a school teacher, And I'll never forget Mike Watkins looking back at me and saying, and we're not. That's all I needed to put me back in my place and realize that everybody's busy. You just your passion needs to be pursued, and everybody's kind of on the same level in that respect. So I joined the commission, and I'm going to guess that was about 95 or 96, because I started teaching in 94. So, and I've been with the commission ever since then, so you do the math, because I can't. And I've headed the commission. I've been the head of the commission probably the last 10 years, I'm guessing, something like that. And I love it. I'm proud that our commissioners, all 9 of them, 4 of the 9 are 40 years and under. And you ask anybody of any nonprofit organization, if you have that kind of youth, you have a future. And that's what I'm excited about, is the future. But getting back to kids, always loved kids. When I decided to leave Spartan Graphics and get into teaching, it was because my wife and I felt like we'd made a connection in a church setting with kids, and I just wanted to do that full time. I didn't want to do that just on Wednesday nights. And so it all kind of came together with education as a backdrop. Here we have the old Sparta High School on the north end of Sparta, taken down in, '69 probably. It's where I did my junior high years. But this is on the face of a brick that Sharkey Badgerow pulled from the rubble. He pulled this and a number of them. He gave them to his classmates. He's a class of 42 guy, or 43, can't remember. Anyhow, Sharkey at a reunion had plates like this made and put on the bricks, and so a lot of these floating around town from the class of 42, class of 43.
Class of 67.
Shelby Field.
Class of 67.
Class of 67. Yeah.
Reunion committee.
Well, you touched base on how your interest began in Sparta history.
Yeah.
So we'd like you to tell us a little bit about the walking tour for the Sparta students, which is such a wonderful part of sharing history, and tell us about that as an ongoing project.
Okay. And that, I think our first tour was in '96. But again, that came out of this IDGP that Mary Stearns dropped on me. And that was the project that I thought, if I can take these photographs that I found of up to 100 years ago, now 120 plus years ago, and find the site and do a now picture and actually introduce some of the same elements. A lot of pictures with horses and buggies and people dressed in their Sunday best. And so I tried to duplicate that. Man, I used Sharkey Badgerow and Ken DeYoung and Shirley McFall and Mary Jean Falconer, Mary Jean Herwalt, and others. Got some horses out there. Drew on some parents of kids that I knew who had horses, students, and so I put this stuff together. Started out with, Dan's got pictures of these things, so I'm sure we're going to see them elsewhere, but started out with just one tour, and it grew. People took an interest in it, and the whole idea was to put together a binder of then and now pictures, and these pictures would be historic in nature, but we'd create a little pathway, and we'd walk up to the site and have a little blurb about what used to be and what's there now. Sometimes we'd have senior citizen docents that would stand there and talk about the site or talk about other things. And so, and they would dress, sometimes in period dress, or at least appropriate dress for what they wanted to talk about. And then I would get vintage cars, line up people to come and during the hour and a half that this tour took place, get those vintage cars to drive around. And I'll be darned if almost annually a kid would walk up to me and say, "Mr. Carter, here are all these old cars. We're on this walking tour. What are the odds of this happening on this given day?" They didn't quite put it like that, but it didn't tumble to them that might have been a planned effort. So we started the tour. I just had 13 sites. And so I had 200 kids and, 50, 60 parent chaperones to break it down, one for every 4 kids, 5 kids, and I had binders for them all. Well, when I had only that many sites, it'd be like a huge clump of people moving from site to site. Nuts. It didn't work. So I tried that for about 2 or 3 years, and I thought, I've got to expand this thing. So that's when I added it to probably, if you add them all up, we probably got 30-some sites. Some of them run over one into the other, but they are sites of Sparta. A lot of Union Street, a lot of Division Street, a lot of cemetery stuff. You go down Union, you go down Washington, you go down Maple, you go down Elm, and there are sites regarding that too. And it grew in popularity because who doesn't like to go on a tour about their own hometown? And the kids seemed to take a local pride in it. Interesting thing was, for 4th graders, I don't think they'd be in it as much. For 6th graders, they're too cool for that. So 5th grade seemed to be and that's a grade that I taught for 21 years, that it sung to them. It just fit, absolutely fit. You add over the years, we've had 7 or 8 years, we've had Bob Shangle, Mr. Live Statue, and he gets the kids all fired up. We build them a platform to stand on, and he takes the part of Jonathan Nash. And I understand earlier interview, you learned a little bit about Jonathan Nash. Well, we had him as a statue that would come to life. And that's pretty, then it goes on and on and on. The POW camp and all kinds of different sites there. But we've done it for I think it's going to be year 24 next spring. I've been retired 3 years, and I've been encouraged to continue with it, and I will until its popularity dies down, that type of thing. Sometimes we do summer, we've done 3 or 4 summer walking tours for adults, and just kind of condensed it and made that work. So, but I love it. I just enjoy doing it. 4,000 kids that know Sparta in a way that they might not have otherwise known it. And also, and the guy behind the camera here, most recently, Dan, we've been at this for 6, 7 years now, something like that. And Dan Salas, award-winning filmmaker, has agreed to follow along while I get on my bike and go from site to site. And every year we crank out a DVD, and so the kids have something to to go home with at the end of the year that's got sound and narration and wonderful editing that Dan does. And for the first year in 2018 now, the kids have, one of our younger people on the commission said, why are you spending all the money on DVDs and burning them and all this kind of thing, labels, and why don't you just stream it? And we old people thought, good idea. So that's what we did, was streamed it this year, and we'll do that in the future also.
Next item that you've been intricate in is the 8th grade history trip to Washington, D.C. each year. What led you to start that 8th grade program?
Okay, didn't start it,
Okay.
and it's not just to DC. It's a trip that's been in existence for, I'm going to say 15 years. Keith Tidy, a 6th grade teacher at the middle school, had an initial effort into that. Countryside Tours is the tour guide, and they charter a couple buses, well, depending on how many kids usually go, anywhere from 60 to 90 kids over the course of a year, 8th graders. In June, the second week in June, we'll pile on two tour buses. And I've gone on this trip. This next year will be my 10th year doing it, and I have a hand in bringing some Sparta history to that. But I'll give you a backdrop of the tour or of the trip itself. It's an 8th grade East Coast trip, and this year I think cost the students about $1,400. So it's not a free trip. Not every 8th grader goes. There are fundraisers. If an 8th grader really wants to go and they could work out the funding through these fundraisers, they could make it work. In fact, as a 5th grade teacher, I start talking to them then about, if you save $7 a week for the next 3 years and blah, blah, blah. So we try to find a way for them to get there, but it is not, usually about a third of the class is able to go on a trip like that. Try to make it available for all of them, and depending on interest, they do it. But anyhow, we get on a bus and we go to Niagara Falls, we go to Boston, we go to New York City, we go to Philadelphia, we go to Washington, D.C., we go to Hershey Park, Pennsylvania, and then we come home. So 7 days, 6 sites. And what I'm sure why Keith hangs on to me going, because here's a 65-year-old now going with a bunch of 8th graders. I know them mostly, all of them, just because I taught them all. I taught a good share of them. Is the fact that I bring local history to what's going on. When we pull into Washington, D.C., I'll show you a brochure that Jeff Van Sickle and I put together. We talk about local connections in Sparta. And those local connections probably start when we go to the White House and we let the kids know that Dorothy Hessler Downton, 64 Sparta grad, was Jerry Ford's secretary all the way up through the White House. Then we take them to Arlington National Cemetery, and we show them the changing of the guard and let them know that Don Bradford, class of 54 in Sparta, was a 1957 member of the Old Guard who guarded the Tomb of the Unknowns. And oftentimes Don's grandkids or great nieces and nephews, had a great niece and a great nephew go this year. And so there's that connection also, that we've got live relatives of some of these people that are going there. So we talk to them about how Don did that back in his military days. We take them then we take them also to Max Walder's grave, who was a 1950 casualty in the Korean War, 48 grad?
47.
47, thank you, 47 grad. And what we do, have a little ceremony there. We take some dirt from Max's childhood home on 10 Mile. My wife and I sneak in, hope this doesn't get far. And then we get some dirt from where the old high school was up on Grove and Union Street and mix it together, and then I put that dirt in about 7 or 8 different bags, and I have the kids in my group, as we have this ceremony and I say a few words about Max, they will put some Sparta dirt, kind of bring Sparta back to Arlington, to Max's grave. It's a very meaningful thing. The kids really grasp the thought process that goes behind this and the respect, solemnity of the occasion. And then we also go to the Vietnam Memorial Wall, and we've got 7 troops. I got a picture over here of those 7 troops that we call our own, from Sparta, Kent City, and those troops paid the ultimate sacrifice, and their names are on the wall. And one of the passions that I have, yeah, thank you, Jim. one of the passions that I have is that people in public service, whether it be military service or public service in terms of what Dorothy did, and others also. I'm in the future. I'd like to include other people that were of service to their country. I just have a passion, like so many people do, that their names not be forgotten. Particularly these guys and Max. I'm a Vietnam era person, civilian. I'm not a veteran. My number on the ping pong ball was high for the 2 years that it was an issue. And I never went. And sometimes I wonder if it's out of I don't think it's out of a debt of guilt. It's out of a debt of gratitude that I feel strongly that these names and these faces not be forgiven. I was privileged to do the funeral service of Carrie Merle, of Jimmy's mother, just a few weeks ago. And I met Jimmy's widow, and I met Jimmy's son, who was 3 months old when Jimmy was killed. And believe you me, those things are not lost on me. But next year when we go to D.C., I'll be able to tell the kids, I met his widow. I met the child that was 3 months old, who now is a grown man, some 50 years ago. It's very, very moving to me, and just to have a passion that their names, their stories not be forgotten. So that's, I think, it pretty much covers what we do in Arlington. The kids walk away. Oh, when we get to the wall, the kids do. I break them up into groups. The kids do a rub of the name, and then they sign their names on these cards, and they expressing thanks. And then when we get back to Sparta, I put this card along with the rub and a picture of the kids in thanks. So annually, these folks know that their sons, in this case, are being honored by Sparta's 8th graders. And hopefully in years to come, these things will come back to them. They certainly, those 8th graders certainly recall everything that, the significance of, to the extent that they can as an 8th grader. Because these guys were just a few years older than them, some of your peers. Shouldn't forget. We should not forget that.
Are there scholarships available?
Don't
or anything
have scholarships per se. I think Countryside gives a scholarship, one scholarship in the whole program. There are a number of schools that do this, but each school goes independently. There are, I think, 3 different merchandise type scholarships where Keith will have people come in and say, "Okay, kids, you can sell this cookie dough for so much," and the school, your contribution to the trip gets funding for that. Used to be magazine subscriptions. I can't recall specifically, but there are fundraisers that address different needs that people might have, and coupon books is a big one also.
Are there any local businesses or citizens that donate?
That's a
money
good point.
towards that?
Leave it to Jim Lyles to feed you with some of these pertinent questions, because we haven't to this point, and it's food for thought that they get a handle on this, and just to reduce overall the prices or to create scholarships. That's a very good idea, to have kids go that might not other. But they've got enough warning. I shouldn't say price will be something that keeps kids away to a certain extent, but I think if the desire is there, we tell them, ask for money at Christmas and on your birthday and things like that, so that they can know that there is a way and there will be a way. But that's a good thought. Local input into that from a business standpoint. I think that's valuable. Yeah.
Do you see any growth possibilities for the youth and the Sparta history?
Well, we have we've used like the National Honor Society in the past for events that we have coming up. When we were more involved with Relay for Life, we had our NHS would help us. It was an overnight event, and we old people didn't want to stay overnight, so they would guard our material overnight and help us in different ways. When we had a veterans event, they did a lot of wait staff work and cleanup afterwards. And most recently, just because we've hired a a consultant, former student of mine, graduate of Central, and got a graduate degree in museum science. To help her, we have established a local history club where students can come in three afternoons a week and help catalog and scan, organize our files here. And so there's a good something built there also for local history.
Okay. Finally, I would like to ask you, what have been the major moments or events for the Historical Commission during the time that you've been involved?
Oh wow! Well, let me say this: we've gotten much more active in the last 6, 7, 8 years than we were before, and I think age had a lot to do with that. When the commission would get around originally, it was to simply to sit at the table monthly and to discuss some of the events from long past days. Leonard Farrick, who was a tremendous storyteller, would regale us with stories from the past. As time moved on, we wanted to be more a part of the community, more a part of the activities of the community, and so we've gotten ourselves involved in that to a much greater extent. We have, every other year, we have something called Sparta Notables, and those are 10 people or groups that we choose every other year to be recognized. Have a little book that comes out. We have a program in November. We got one coming up this November for the 2018, the third class of Sparta Notables. So we do that. We've had veterans events, a couple significant veterans events this past November. We had we rented actually it was given to us, love that, at the high school auditorium, and had Don Bradford talk to us, but had a program, a documentary professionally done about the Tomb of the Unknown. So we did that. So veterans causes, we've got a wall here of veterans. This building itself has only come about in the last 5 years, where we purchased it from Choice One Bank and created an in-town presence. We have a schoolhouse presence out on the corner of Division and 13 Mile Road. And that is breaking out such that we talk about and display township items, a lot of tools, a lot of township-related things, and then all things Sparta area schools. Got the big murals of composites of high school students, and then also then in town we talk about the in-town things, the Sparta Village things. You can look around and see previous businesses and organizations, things like that.
But it's our town, love it anyway. Come what may, it's our town.